This is your loving government. Please stay in your homes for your safety and security. This is your loving government. Please stay in your homes for your safety and security. This is your loving government. Please stay in your homes for your safety and security. This is your loving government. Please stay in your homes for your safety and security.
Last week, Dr. Michael Ryan, he's a leader at the World Health Organization, announced that in response to the spread of this virus, authorities may have to enter people's homes and remove family members, presumably by force.
In most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
Just so you know, we're coming to your house, seizing your children and, quote, isolating them in a safe and dignified manner, whatever that means. Now, that's not something that under normal circumstances officials casually drop during briefings. It's the kind of statement that might trigger violence. People don't respond well when you threaten to take their kids. But Ryan said it like it was no big deal, and that's how the media treated it. His threat didn't make headlines in any of the major newspapers in this country. That's the kind of moment we're in.
Coming up is the formation representing China's UN peacekeepers. They are led by Major Generals Xu Youzhe and Ma Baochuan. China contributes the most troops among the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. There are over 2,500 Chinese serving in 7 mission fields, with 8,000 on reserve duty. 13 Chinese peacekeepers have died in foreign lands.
So obviously the plan is to get rid of cash because it's easier and cash is for criminals, and mandate digital currency. Now, if you think about it for a second, you don't want to hand total control of all your money to people who don't like you, so that's not a good idea, but it's happening anyway. And it's happening because ATMs are disappearing. Oh, okay, no one voted on this, but it's happening anyway. And we've got details next. So if they take away cash and make everything digital, and digital currency is central bank digital currency, obviously you have no power whatsoever. If they don't like what you're doing, they just shut you down and you're impoverished. It just happened in Canada last winter, so we know what the consequences are, and we know why they want it. So that couldn't happen, right? Well, we may live to see the day that it does happen. And here's the latest sign that it may be happening. The number of banks and ATM machines in this country are in steep decline. Far fewer than there were just a few years ago. And in some countries like Australia, they're going away at high speed. So this is not something that anyone voted on. This is something that they're just doing, whether you like it or not. So you can say we have cash, but if you can't get cash, then do you really have cash? So where's this going? That's the question we want to assess tonight. And we're going to with Catherine Austin Fitts, who has been monitoring this. She founded the Solari Report. She's also the Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and we're happy to have her. Catherine, thanks for coming on. So I think if you put this up to a vote nationally, most people would say, no, I may not use cash, but I'd like to have cash, because if there's no cash, then I have no control over my life. But it seems like this could be a way to affect the same outcome without a vote.
So, Tucker, the one of the bedrocks of freedom is freedom to do financial transactions, including privately, or freedom to do where you want to do and wherever you want to do. And unfortunately, as the financial system has become more and more digital, you see more and more not only invasive surveillance, but more and more controls. You referred to Canada, perfect example. And the reality, as the financial system gets more controlling and more invasive, it's a little bit like bringing up a corral around us. And CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and vaccine passports or digital IDs are sort of the last shutting of the gate. It's hard for many people to imagine the risks here because we're so used to living with financial transaction freedom, and we don't understand that when this gate closes on us, we literally will be sitting in a system where the central banks believe that our assets belong to them, and they can dictate where we can spend money and what we can spend money on. The important thing to understand is central bank digital currencies are not currencies. It's a financial transaction control grid, and it gives the ability for the central bankers, and they've said this publicly, the ability to not only set the rules centrally, but enforce the rules centrally. If you don't behave, you can have your money turned off.
You know, you keep hearing people on television say cash is for criminals. Why would you need cash if you're not doing something bad? Why are so few financial journalists pointing out that actually if cash goes away, so does any power you might have had over your own life?
Well, I find a lot more journalists are beginning to understand and are beginning to not only write about this and talk about this, but do documentaries. We just had a new documentary done here out of the Netherlands called State of Control, which does a great job of explaining the invasive nature of this control grid. I think it's very hard for people who've grown up and enjoyed Western liberty and human liberty to imagine literally that we're going into a system where literally our homes, our cars, our communities become digital concentration camps. So if you've enjoyed liberty, it's very hard to, perceive this iceberg before you hit it. And that's why it's so important, and I commend you for talking about CBDCs, because we need to not let the propaganda persuade us that, one, this is convenient, or two, that we need this, or three, we need to understand not only the dangers of CBDCs, but the opportunities if we start to reverse financial tyranny. We've seen the financial system engineered using the federal credit to increase inequality and centralize political and economic control, and it's shrinking our wealth and it's shrinking our economy. We have debt growing and central control growing much faster than the GDP. That can be reversed. So the opportunity of rejecting financial tyranny and financial transaction control is so important. And all over the United States, there are great state legislatures working on legislation and passing legislation to protect our right to use cash, increasingly talking about state bullion depositories, state sovereign banks. There are many people doing this, and if you look at what they're doing, when it succeeds, it can really reinvigorate our economy. And so don't forget the opportunity of rejecting this.
Right. I think when people understand it, that's the first step. Catherine Austin-Fitts, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Once in the news for building hospitals for COVID-19 at breakneck speed, a record 8 days in the year 2020. China is now in the news for these quarantine centers and makeshift camps. If you think the COVID crackdown measures are brutal, then what do you feel about this? These people locked up in quarantine camps being treated worse than prisoners. Toilets are being used as quarantine centers, inhuman living conditions in quarantine camps. Children isolated from their parents for their stay in these quarantine camps as the government monitors health status digitally through COVID passports.
and not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom, because with freedom comes obligations and responsibility.
To Atlanta on the front lines of fighting the coronavirus. Thursday, we learned passengers arriving from China could be quarantined at Dobbins Air Reserve Base in Marietta. The Department of Health and Human Services asking the Pentagon to find military installations near 11 major airports. Each base could house up to 20 travelers while they undergo quarantine for 2 weeks. However,
we need to make sure that everybody continues to let us know where those folks are. If you've observed recurring violations of the Safer at Home order, please continue to let us know at coronavirus.lacity.org/business violation. You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Reopen are circulating in dozens of states. Reopen New York rallied in the city last week, demanding small businesses be allowed to get back to work and pushing back against the label non-essential.
Does this virus only spread in small businesses? And yes, I know. I've heard the argument. We are not essential. You know what? To my children, my small business is essential. It is with money from my brick and mortar store that I put food in their mouths and fill their bellies.
Get the jab or lose the job. But tonight, Oklahoma fighting back against the Biden administration's mandate that will affect hundreds of millions of U.S. workers, hundreds of thousands of those there in Oklahoma.
Well, I trust Californians, and most are doing the right thing when it makes common sense. So, for instance, when the governor talks about this curfew between 10 at night till 5 in the morning, it's a head scratcher. Is this virus so smart that it's not going to infect people if they're not in their homes by 9:59?
Elizabeth Fry shows us what this closure means and what it looks like in the weeks ahead.
Eerily empty and strangely quiet. We were down here this past year. Beaches were crowded, and there was quite a few people here in comparison to obviously to this year. It's not the usual sight you'd expect to see on a warm Saturday afternoon at Clearwater Beach.
It's a very eerie feeling. To say the least, I guess, and it's very sad.
With beach chairs backed up and umbrellas put away, the closed sign staggered on the sidewalk paints a clear picture. The beaches will remain closed to help stop the spread of COVID-19.
All of the public beaches in Pinellas County be closed, as well as the parking lots that have beach access. We began that yesterday, and certainly appreciate the diligence and the cooperation of all of the cities.
Well, folks, baseball is back. Again, the fans are not. People have missed the sport, but the replacement for fans is just plain weird. They've got some virtual fans there, some cardboard cutouts. They do kind of look real.
The cardboard ones.
Yeah, you see there, Will Smith of the Dodgers had an entanglement today with one of the cardboard fans there, taking a smoke shot right to the face, and we're going to have an entanglement.
Esa es la impresentable. Positivo en coronavirus, que encima está huyendo de la policía, pero esto es una broma, ¿o qué?